what I'll do is I'll just start with some introductions, and let's have a dialogue in terms of some of the stuff that actually happened there in the lab, because while I did attend a few of the sessions, I didn't follow through with every one of them. I didn't really join a coaching circle, and so missed out a lot on that. Probably I'll do it the next time. So yeah, for those of you who are probably, and please do at any point in time when I stop, if there's something that you need to add, or if you need to correct me, please do. Don't worry about it, because I'm myself pretty much a learner. What I'm trying to do is to really bring a coherence between systemic approach, coaching, and theory U in various senses. So that's really the whole purpose of this particular session. Yeah, for those of you who are not really that familiar with the theory U, Otto Scharmer, who's leading the theory U movement over the last many years, and he has written several books on theory U and in various formats. He comes from a lineage of organizational development, learning specialists from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And the founding father of that was Kurt Lewin, who is considered to be the father of organizational development, which was started, I think, at Bethel, Maine, just after the Second World War, when he moved from Germany to the United States. It's a founding institution for NTL, National Training Laboratory, which he set up in Bethel. It is really the founding institution for organizational development. It's kind of a mecca for all ODs specialists. It's an amazingly vibrant organization, great experts. I'm privileged to be part of that NTL group as a member. And in later days, there were people like Edgar Schein, who followed him and who was also at MIT, and Peter Senge, and now Otto Scharmer. It's almost like the greatest gurus of all in these areas, especially of learning theory, organizational development, and so on, in various forms. Each one has gone in a different way. Peter Senge has been pretty much on learning. Edgar Schein has been on OD, consulting approaches. His humble inquiry should be required reading for any coach. And now Otto Scharmer with his theory U. So one of the things that impresses me about theory U is it's very much founded on the principles of coaching. And it's also very much founded on the learning cycle, as it were, which is moving from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence to conscious competence, and finally to unconscious competence. One of the basic tools that Otto Scharmer uses in theory is that by and large, most of us, when we are looking at the future, when we are looking at what we want to do, it's usually as a projection of what has happened in the past. And it doesn't really help, because our past has been a series of conditioned experiences. And if you are still controlled and conditioned by those unconscious incompetencies, it's going to be extremely difficult to break away from those and move into a future position. And so if you go through his book, Theory U, one of the pictures that he draws right in the beginning is about two peaks and a huge chasm in between, and someone standing there at one side of the chasm on a peak, looking to jump over onto the other side, what he calls as an emerging future. So the whole principle of Theory U is about that emerging future. The emerging future is a leap of possibilities from where we are now into the future. And it need not necessarily be one that is a gradual evolution. It could be an instant stroke of awareness, instant enlightenment, which is typically what happens in any kind of a coaching conversation as well. And these are some of the things which are extremely synchronous and parallel with coaching concepts. The state that we are in, and which, as Otto Schoma correctly says, pretty much the whole world in many parts of the world is in, be the conditions that may prevail in the US currently, or the Brexit in UK, or various other parts of the world, or in India for that matter, or China or Hong Kong, wherever it is. He calls it the state of absencing. In a sense, the darkness, what he calls a social pathology. And he terms it as also the economy of, or economies of destruction in one of his books. In absencing, what we are constantly doing is download the past conditioning into what we do today. So some of the basic responses that people have, and every one of us, I think, is guilty of it in some way or another. Some are more guilty. Whether you look at climate change or a problem of immigration or it's religious intolerance or whatever, like Sharma says, the first response of most people, especially those in power, is to say that this is not happening. Oh, there is no such thing as climate change, as Donald Trump is so fond of saying. This is all a fiction. This is all creation of people. And those are people who are the creators of maximum damage. Unfortunately, there are many such issues. That's not the only issue. Oh, we don't have a problem of immigrants. We don't have a problem of religious intolerance. We don't have a problem of dissent. So everything is negated based probably on multiple things, which is a desire to hold on to power, greed, whatever it may be, or sometimes pure ignorance. And when it goes beyond a point that you cannot hide anymore, what happens then is, oh, I'm not responsible for it. If it is there, it happens. It's got nothing to do with me. I'm not responsible for it. And the third step beyond that would be, even when we believe that we are in some way responsible for it, maybe I'm responsible for it, but there's nothing that I can do about it. I can't do anything about it myself. So these are various stages of absencing, which we see happening around us everywhere. And to be honest, I mean, you can see it happening in your own community in many ways. If there is going to be I live in Bangalore and I see around me horrendous traffic or poverty or dirt, the responses are pretty much the same. Why blame a Trump or someone else? All of us are pretty much in the same space in saying, oh, it's not even happening. Oh, I managed to get by somehow, or I'm not responsible, or even if I'm part of it, the problem, there's nothing that I can do about it. So this space of being stuck, this state of being in denial, and so on, we need to do something about it. We need to move from the state of unconscious incompetence into at least the first level of conscious incompetence, of realizing that, yes, there is something happening out there, that we need to do something about it. And then from the conscious incompetence to the conscious competence of doing something about it. And that becomes a habit. And so in a sense of moving forward from inaction to action, moving from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence and conscious competence. And that whole process is what he calls as moving from absencing to presencing. So he talks about it as a process of theory U, in which in the state of absencing, our mind is closed. We don't want to accept that there is an issue. Our heart is closed. We don't want to do anything about it. We don't feel compelled to do anything about it. Our will is closed because we don't want to do anything about it. We don't want to act on it. So in the state of presencing, which is the core of theory U, which is a movement into the emerging future, what he calls as a social emergence. The 3 steps are opening up our mind in terms of curiosity to be able to see what we so far have not seen. Open up our heart to be able to sense what we do not sense so far, and ultimately do something about it as an open will. And here he talks about various blocks that may happen. One of those blocks is very judgmental, the voice of judgment, as he calls it, which prevents us from acknowledging that there is a problem out there. The voice of cynicism, oh, if it is there, so what? I have nothing to do with it. And finally, the voice of fear, where, oh, am I capable of doing it? If I do this, what else may happen? What are the risks that I'm taking? So as you go through these processes, moving from the open mind to open heart to open will, you reach a deep space of reflective presensing in which you get the courage to move forward in terms of how do you act in terms of overcoming this. And that's what the whole of Theory Lab is about. And that's really what coaching is about. And that is what systemic coaching is about. So in this process, Sharma puts together this concept of moving from an egocentric state, where each one of us is only bothered about what we are doing at that particular point in time, to a much larger ecocentric space, where we are moving from the state of looking inwards for our own benefit into a much larger space of looking for the benefit of not only others, but of the entire Earth or beyond, in terms of the total climate and other requirements that will preserve this planet in a way. So one of the things that most impressed me was, I had not seen this before, but after that I have seen it several times in various places, is in one of the videos that is part of the Theories U Lab Zero, there is this picture that I think it was one of the Apollo missions, where one of the astronauts, as they are traveling from Earth towards the moon, totally by accident, turns the camera towards the Earth. Until then, it was up on the moon, looking to where they were going. And suddenly there is this picture of the Earth, which is coming up there, looming. And there's a very, very, I think the region that they were passing through at that point in time was somewhere in Australia, somewhere in the Pacific region. And around the Earth, there is this thin layer, a kind of a yellow layer on top of a blue, luminous, lit up space. And you hear the astronaut at that time saying, you can YouTube it, it's available. It's called the Rising Moon or something of that sort, or Rising Earth. I'm not quite sure what it is called. And the guy says, you know, it's so fantastic to see, and at the same time, so frightening to see that our entire existence depends on this thin layer, which protects us from the radiation and various other kinds of things which are puncturing through the ozone layer. The whole Earth will perish. And that is what is likely to happen if our climate, the way that we are destroying our climate, our environment doesn't change. So it's a beautiful statement. It's something resonates, and that's something that is happening in pretty much every state of our existence in the world today, at different parts of the world, in various degrees. One may not be as big as to destroy the entire planet, but it could quite possibly be enough to destroy the community in which we live in. For instance, very near the place where I live in Bangalore, and the whole of Bangalore, actually. It used to be the city of 1,000 lakes, and it used to be the city of 1,000 or million gardens. Single-handedly, the politicians in this country have reduced it to practically nothing. And most of the lakes have been silted over deliberately, and property developers have built all kinds of stuff over it without even caring about what's going to happen to the future generations. And so finally, at this point in time, there are many group citizens who are fighting against it, and they're trying to recover as much as they can. And it's so heartwarming to see some of these things happening. People are taking responsibility to move forward. So these are some of the things that, through this whole concept of Theory U, Shyama is trying to move people. And we would strongly recommend this year's, I think, Theory U Lab 1 is finished. Like what Stephanie says, it's going to be Theory U, the second lab. But any one of you can join the Theory U 0 lab and then go to Theory 1 next year and then move forward. And I would strongly suggest that every coach should actually go through this to gain an experience of what it's all about. So I'll stop here for a moment, and I would like, yeah, Stephanie, could you go a little more in detail about what I'm saying? And if any of the things that I have said, it's not quite correct, please correct what I've said, and yeah, expand a little bit further on that. Yes. Then we can have a dialogue. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Ram. You had a beautiful summary of the essentials, especially with the looking back and bending the focus back on ourselves. So looking on ourselves on the earth was also the most touching thing I've had as an experience in the beginning, to be aware how much change I can make, how much I can awake from this I can do nothing. So for me, it was really eye-opening, and I have to say I'm now in a big transformation process as a trainer for mindfulness. So for me, it's the right time doing this now, because I'm working a lot with mindfulness and organization. So one of the things I really would recommend to everybody is the Coaching Circle Case Clinic. It's in this year's source book on page 12. It is a very well-described exercise how to do a coaching for someone with sensing, describing things in pictures, with not criticizing, improving, staying with the person. It's so rich in dimensions, and this was also one of the experience I can recommend everybody. I had huge insights with total strangers on my situation, on my business, and how I can sense myself even better, even though we are coaches and we are very aware and we are very multidimensional, but it's such a deep experience to work with these tools, and they are so simple. I can only recommend it, and I'm even thinking of doing the next one as well, because, you know, being in this development stage, you can see more, see deeper. And what also touched me was this ecosystem to ecosystem. So in Germany, where I live, we have a huge industry crisis now with automotive going on. And this is also a big pollution, a big thing, you know, killing the ecosystem. So I really saw new pictures, new dimensions, and new things where I can be of service and where I can make and change things by the way of presencing. So presencing is the strongest thing, feeling the future emerge. And Otto has two questions. The first question is, who am I? And the second question is, what is my work? And when you talk about the you, at the bottom of the U curve, you work with silence, meditation, presencing, doing nothing, and letting things emerge. And this is a very powerful exercise. And also embodiment, you know, the stuck exercise where you and picture your situation where you are right now in your work, in your life, in your challenges, as a body movement, as a body feeling. And there's so much wisdom. It's incredible once you tap the source of your inner wisdom. I hope I'm not too theoretical and now, but this is what happened.
Yeah, okay. For those who may not be familiar with this approach, to some extent, let me try and explain this from a slightly different perspective, and please correct me, Stephanie, as we go along. First of all, we have talked about this before. Let us start with the simple fact of listening. There are many people who have defined listening in different ways. There is a famous coactive coaching definition that many CTI coaches would be familiar with, where Laura Whitworth talks about these 3 stages of inner dialogues, external dialogues, and global dialogues, and so on. There is a Carl Rogerian definition of empathetic listening. But the most complete definition of listening that I have so far come across is the one that Otto Scharmer puts together. The first level of listening, and every one of us who is really honest would recognize this, that even those who are coaches, our listening is primarily to confirm what we already know. It's a totally judgmental, selective listening. That's all we really want to listen. Because we want to be validated. We want to feel safe in the space that we are in. And therefore, anyone says, and this in neurolinguistic programming we call as deletion and distortion, even if somebody is saying something different from what we know about, for example, if somebody were to go and tell Trump, look, these are the facts and figures and so on and so forth, and at the same time, if somebody says, everything is okay, so all that he's going to hear is everything is okay. So it is that judgmental listening, which is 80% of the time, that occupies us, and which is a most dangerous form of listening, which is completely egocentric. At the next level, you are moving from, let's say, the center of your own ego, where you're closing yourself with a closed mind. You are moving to the periphery, as it were. You're going to the window in the room and you start looking out. And that is a listening curiously. You at least start inquiring into what else there may be. It's more like a research experience in terms of, I just would like to explore what is out there. Why is the sky blue? Or why is whatever, the leaves are green, and so on and so forth. It may be a childish curiosity in terms of what we are doing. At least it's one step better than when we are completely closed in a closed mind state of judgmental listening, moving into a curiosity stage. The very, very minimal level at which a coach should be, or anyone who is an adult who is responsible should be. The third level of listening that Otto Scharmer describes is the empathetic listening, which is pretty similar to what Carl Rogers talks about, where we are looking at the other person as to what the other person's needs are, what the other person wants. We put ourselves in the other person's shoes, be it the client, be it someone else. What are the problems that they have? What are the pains they are undergoing? If there are people out there who do not have enough to eat, what is it that they are going through? What is it that we can do about it? And that is the empathetic listening, empathetic observation, empathetic visioning. And what I have rarely ever read about, and the first time that I came across, was the fourth level of listening that Otto Scharmer talks about, which is called the generative listening, where he says, can we look at it in the sense of listening to someone as to what that person wants to be? Or even if it's not someone, the climate, the earth, the world, as what it should be, what it wants to be. The generative listening, the generative visioning is amazingly the most powerful way of looking at it. And if you're looking at a coaching conversation and you're trying to bring it back into a limited space of what we may do with a client in front of us, we keep telling our learners, can you look at the client in terms of what the client wants to be? What is the desired outcome? Can you visualize the client in that space? And as you visualize a client in that space, you no longer see the deficiencies of the client. You do not any longer see about the weaknesses of the client, the incompetencies of the client. Instead, you see the potential, the strength. What is it that can take the client forward? And then all that you have left is to how to move the client forward. That is how powerful that simple one shift that can make, moving from even a very high level of empathetic listening, where you are putting yourself in the client's shoes, but that is still where the client is today in the present moment, in the space of that client, where the client is possibly disempowered. Because a coaching conversation typically, again, going back to Carl Rogers, is about a coach who's congruent and empowered with a client who is perhaps not congruent and disempowered. And that's the reason why the client has come to the coach. And so you are really looking at a person who is in a sense disempowered, who is in a sense, therefore, misaligned and incongruent in terms of what the client says, what the client feels, and how the client acts. And these are the unconscious incompetencies which are holding the client back. And so in order to truly be able to help the client move forward, you don't need to be a therapist. All that you need to do is to not merely place yourself in the client's shoes, but place yourself in the client's generative shoes, the shoes of the client as the client wishes to be, the outcome that the client desires as an empowered person. And if you're able to do that, and I think it takes some effort, but if you're able to do that, you would see miracles happening. This is something that after listening to Otto Scharmer in the last couple of years, I have again and again tried to do that. So as a part of the Theory U lab, if I remember right, there is a listening exercise where they ask you every week. In fact, I get a message every second day or a third day. So can you rate your listening in terms of what percentage of the listening is level 1 listening, which is judgmental, selective listening, and how much of it is curious, level 2 listening, how much of it is empathetic listening, and how much of it is generative listening. And if you sort of follow that, and if you journal it yourself, you will find an amazing improvement that is happening. It doesn't have to be about a particular client. It could be just about a situation outside of you. It can be that you look out of the window, like what Stephanie is saying, something is happening in terms of the climate, or something else that is happening in Germany, or something else that is happening outside my window in my home in Bangalore, or wherever you are. So there your eyes have been pretty closed, and you want to look at what is it that you want to look at, not the reality of what is happening out there. Some of those people who are suffering, some of those people who are in pain, who are not as privileged as you are. And if you are able to shift your visioning, your listening, and your perception from that level 1, which is a closed mind, into the next level of at least a curious, open mind, and then move into the empathetic state, which is an open heart space, and finally into that generative space, which is the open will state, where you really feel, yeah, now I can actually see what can be done. What is that emerging future? What is it that the future wants to be, in a sense? What is that space wanting to be in future? Can we move there? I think that phenomenal shift.
May I add something here, Ram?
Yeah, please do, Stephanie.
Yes,
thank you.
You're describing beautifully the 4 stages. Now looking at our coachee, being with them, no judgment, no voice of fear. So really being with them in the present situation, also being able to see the future. What I'm feeling strongly when I do the generative listening, which happens to me maybe 4%, 3% in a week, because it's really high level, I feel I'm changing as well. So it's a mutual process that happens. So I'm on a new level with my coachee. It's a common development. I don't know how to describe it. It happened to me in the coaching clinic, in the case clinic. So what happens with the open mind and open will, I'm willing to leave my position and grow with the person to a different opportunity space, whatever will happen. And there's the magic that happens, because things become possible which have been just invisible within 1 second. And you have a different energy. You feel very strongly connected. I feel the strongest connection to these people. I've never had this, I never met them before in a person. So we have a strong connection. It's incredible by doing this and observing the rules of no judgment, no fear, and this open heart. So being head, heart, mind, everything aligned, and together with the coachee, developing something together.
Thanks, Tiffany. I just want to come back to you in a minute. Anuradha, one is, what Kannan has put up there as edx.org. Kannan, if you can also just look up and put the Presencing Institute, Otto Scharmer's, that would also have pretty much all the information that can lead you into it. In fact, it has a lot of information, resources, tools, and techniques. And EDX is really the MOOC, Massive Open Online Program Center, where these TRU Labs 0, 1, and 2 are made available free of cost. If you want to give a contribution, you can. And for certification, they charge you something. Thanks, Kannan. So the presencing.org plus edx.org will give you every information. If nothing else, just go there and try and download whatever information there is. It's truly amazing, and it's truly something which every coach should do to be able to understand. And it also lays the foundation, as I said, in terms of looking at it from an OD perspective, from a systemic perspective, much larger ecocentric perspective. So the question I have for you, Stephanie, if you can just explain, because unfortunately I could not, or I did not join a coaching circle.
Yes.
What happens in a coaching circle, and how people, even otherwise, if our group of coaches here want to form coaching circles,
yes,
what is it that they can do with it?
Yes. So what's interesting, Ram, is that a coaching circle is really strictly drafted with certain steps by the minute. So you're starting 2 minutes to select a case giver, and the case giver is describing, he has 4 questions. What is my intention? What is my limitation? What do I need to let go of? And where do I need your help? So he has 4 questions in 10 minutes where he explains his context, his background. And then there is a 3 minutes of silence where people are processing what they heard. And then they start giving the coachee, the case giver, feedback with feelings, embodiment, gestures, pictures, and everything that arises. Then the case giver has the chance to ask questions, and then you have this 20-minute generative dialogue. So the whole setting is within 1 hour. And in the end, you're discussing your learnings and your feeling and the sensing process. So it's really effective. And the basic part is happening for me and for all of us. We had 5 cases. Is happening once people look back on the earth. So they're describing what they heard from you in a picture, in a feeling, and these data and these feelings are so rich that you really sometimes can really solve your problem. So they are not giving you advice or tips or expertise. They are telling you, when you say this, I'm seeing, I'm feeling, I'm sensing anxiety, or I'm feeling passion, or I feel. And this dialogue then evolves into the generic dialogue. That's basically what happens.
So if that process, if let's say in group of coaches, if they want to practice, would you recommend it the same way, or is there some modification that you would like to suggest? And what kind of cases could possibly be? Could it be like, for example, could it be a kind of one person or a group of people supervising one another, for example?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. For supervision, I would also evolve this. I will extend it to other contexts because it's so powerful. I would in the beginning, my feeling was strange because we tried to do it by the book, and my downloading was, oh, it's never gonna work. We don't know each other. Who is who? And we did it by the book, and it worked so much, so strongly, that I really would recommend doing it by the book. So really jumping right in, one case giver, one timekeeper who is a little bit also the moderator, and then is one page in the source book, and it's for free. So I would recommend this. I can also send it to Magda if it's for free, so you can distribute it later. It's one page, and it's so powerful. Yes, you can do it in supervision, and you can do it basically for everything. I wouldn't see, maybe, I mean, for therapeutic cases, not so good, of course. I mean, coaching is not the right thing there too, but you can do it for everything: business development, fear, anxiety, stakeholder situations, team situations, everywhere. Actually, we did it on a game with a software developer who was really stuck, and I was downloading and thinking, oh my God, it's not my expertise, but the pictures and the things we sensed and we could mirror back to him were so powerful, so he could go to the next level working on the emotional impact of his game he was developing. So it was beautiful.
Yeah, Stephanie, just a question people have asked. If you could just go back once again, you mentioned about the intention, limitation, etc., the 4 steps.
Yes.
What are the 4 things that the case giver brings in, and what would be the other responses actually?
Yes, so the case giver brings in, first of all, his intention. So what do I want to achieve in my situation? His context, you know, stakeholders, these kinds of things. So what is his limitations? What do I have to let die? What do I have to let go of? And I think the 4th one, I'm not 100% sure, but that's how we did it, is where do I need the help of the group? Where specifically do I need your input? What do I want you to look out for when I'm speaking? Where am I stuck? So this is the basic thing. Once he described his case, people have a short chance to ask questions if they don't understand the context or the stakeholder or the situation. And then you have the 3 minutes of silence. And after the silence, you're describing back to the case giver, when I hear you say that, I see a picture of something, I feel something, there is a gesture, there is pain. So everything you're sensing in these 3 minutes that comes up, you're basically telling him. So you're using the power of the silence to let things emerge. And this is a difference. It's not a solution-based approach. It's an emerging approach. So everything can be there, of course. And in the end, I was confused. And this is also what Otto Scharmer said. What happens right after is nothing. But with this, I developed an idea I wasn't conscious of. 2 weeks later in the prototype clinic, I was working on the same case and people gave me a totally different feedback because I had unconsciously emerged already more in my problem. And I saw the growth only by mirroring it back from me, from the group again. So it's very subtle. You have to be very mindful. And in the beginning, it seems nothing, but it's strong.
You're absolutely right. And I'll go back to some of the theories on this. What you're saying is that the case giver, who's actually the client in the group, in a sense, the others are coaches, so it talks about what is problem, basically the problem statement. What's my pain point? What is it that my intention is really the outcome that I want to do? And it's like in a coaching conversation, the PCC markers. Why is it important to me to let go of that? And then what is it that I need to do to be able to do that? So will you please help me? Something like that is the plea.
But it's not a solution, Ram. So that's a big difference. Not a solution.
Right. It's a shift.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shift. Okay.
Yes.
So, and in that shift, that is what Otto Scharmer calls about. What is the situation outside calling you to do, as it were? And we also heard in the colloquium some people like Alan Seal coming to the same thing, that the space outside, in a systemic sense, what is it asking you to be, as it were? And whether the answer comes or not, that's a different matter. So here, when people are silent, and what they do is not to offer solutions, but they, in that silent space, they generatively have listened, they now visualize, and they feed back exactly what they feel within them. As you said, in various forms. It could be as metaphors, it could be maybe in just gestures, it could be visualization, it could be whatever it is. And that's all that they do. And then the person who is the client interprets it in whatever way that it impacts the client and to form an opinion.
Yeah. I can tell you in my case what happens, and that's where the magic happens. So I was looking for an opportunity for my mindfulness business, and some of the feedback was that the way I want to live that with me is best to look for opportunities in the education sector. And I have no connection to the education sector whatsoever. I took this in the back of my head. 2 weeks later, I met a lady who is working with education and said, we are working on ULab 2 prototype in education, and can you join us with mindfulness? So it emerged. So now I'm in a project with education. So this is, in the first thing I was thinking, okay, education, is not my thing. But what happened, it worked, and I met someone. So nothing happened until 2 weeks later, I met the lady. And now I'm in an education prototype. So it emerged from this idea with no consequence, but then they asked me, yes, we need a mindfulness trainer in our project.
So what you're in effect saying is that there was absolutely no cognitive, analytical, rational link to what happened in that coaching circle space and what transpired, and yet it was almost as if there's a collective consciousness that was in play out here, and something really happened and somebody reached out to you.
Exactly.
Because, this is something extraordinarily powerful. This I have experienced many times. There are processes which, but this is a much, much simpler process. Just by doing this, if one is able to do it, like you said, Kannan has put it already there in terms of the tools and techniques and that presencing org. Most of this information is available. So please make use of it. Try and see, experiment with it. That's all that we are asking of you.
Because I also recommend something,
sure.
Ram, in terms of training the listening skills? I did the daily listening thing, but I also did work with my family and friends and you can imagine in family, there's a lot of downloading happening. People are like this, and he always behaves like this. So what I saw, I met new people in in my downloading. So if you want to test it a little bit, especially the empathy walk, it is really great to do it with family and friends because it's a safe space and you open up so much more deep connections. It's incredible.
Thanks a lot. Magda has brought in Draven. Draven also has done this program similar to what you have done. So Draven, Stephanie had just talked about what happens in a coaching circle. Like you explained to me the other day, that the client comes up and talks about intention, limitations, and help needed and all that stuff. And the rest of the people in the coaching circle feed back in terms of metaphors and gestures and whatever they have, something back. And Stephanie has just talked about how it actually manifested in terms of something actualizing in a completely different context that she never expected that would happen. So would you like to share your experiences of what happened, and also a bit about this empathy walk? And you also talked to me about the prototyping. So if these are some of the elements, if you could just briefly explain.
Sure. Thanks. I'm sorry, I missed out on some time now. I just joined. As I went through theory, the first thing that happened during the coaching circle for me was when we shared not giving feedback in terms of solutioning for the situation that the person was bringing into the case that they were presenting. the moment, the first time I went through the coaching circle, and when people shared metaphors and they shared expressions and other forms of what came up for them as they heard the case, it was a huge realization for me that the metaphors start striking me, and the images started striking me in ways which I hadn't imagined my situation to be. And that started opening up a kind of, started giving me ideas about how I could deal with my situation without anybody directly telling me what I should be doing in that situation. That was the big shift that started taking place. And every time we started practicing this in multiple coaching circle sessions, each person who presented the case, everyone had the same experience, that the metaphors and the images that people started showing to them, or drawing or portraying to them, they all carried immense amount of information which the original case presenter did not have access to on their own. That was the huge shift. There was a whole lot of information coming in over there. Like, for example, I presented a case where somebody told me that it felt like I was standing as a mountain between the CEO and his team as an interventionist. And I happened to be the mountain. And they felt that if I could be the mountain under the CEO, and that shift took place. So this kind of an image which they share, and or a metaphor like it seems like you are stuck inside of, you are tending to drift towards a whirlpool which is there in the middle of a sea, and you're getting dragged into that whirlpool. These kind of visualizations, these kind of images, these kind of this really helps. It starts giving you a perspective to the problem that you are in, and in a way that you didn't have access to it, that information. And it kind of starts giving you an understanding as what actions I could really take in this situation. That is what really I came away hugely with in the coaching circles. The empathy walks, again, I found...
Driven, just for a moment, I want to point this out to people who are here, all of you coaches, that don't for a moment imagine that you cannot do it in a regular coaching conversation. ICF does not prohibit you from doing it. In fact, sharing of what the coach experiences, and somebody had asked a question here about, is the ACT process combined with Rogerian Sharma generative vision? Not deliberately, but yes, it can. And ACT processes sensations, emotions, and thoughts. It's both about a coach being able to point out as to what he sees as being experienced by the client, and also what is experienced by me. In this particular case, in the coaching circle, pretty much they're only talking about what they experience in metaphorical or other forms, and feeding it back in a way which are far more powerful than words. And it has an amazing effect because it works on the unconscious mind. And if you study enough of Jungian theory, it has a far more powerful connotation in that. And as Stephanie was saying, there is surely a collective unconscious, a collective conscious, or whatever you want to call it. In the Jungian theory, it's collective unconscious. In the Hindu-Buddhist theory, it's called the collective conscious. There is a way that we impact one another. It's like the famous saying, the butterfly fluttering its wings in China creates a cyclone or a typhoon in Peru, or whatever it is. The universe is a membrane, it's an energy membrane. And whether you believe it or not, it does happen. And so these are one of the effects. So what I would urge all coaches is also to experiment with, in their coaching practice with a client, as to when they hear something really powerful coming from the client, share what you feel. Share your emotions, share your sensations, what is happening in your body and the thoughts, but non-judgmentally. It's not your agenda. It doesn't have to be leading, but this is what I feel. So how does that make you feel? Does it create any kind of a shift in you? What shift does it create? What do you see happening out there? Something like that as a question. Yeah, yes, Raman, if you could just continue with the empathy walk, and then I want to go back to Stephanie and ask her for her experiences.
Sure. The empathy walk was extremely useful because we had it in two parts. First was in a professional kind of a setup, and then subsequently later on in the program, it was with one of your in your personal relationships, and both of them were extremely useful. In the professional setup, like for example, I took on an empathy walk with a person who was a very senior executive in the same organization, and I didn't know much about this person, but I chose this person and went on a walk with this person for about 90 minutes. And by the end of the 90 minutes, what I realized was that firstly, you get an opportunity to practice listening, empathetic listening. And as you start empathetically listening, I realized this person started opening up more and more. And when we got into a little more kind of a personal space, this person really opened up to a point where the person shared their professional concerns, professional issues, problems and challenges that they were facing, he was facing. And then he also moved into a personal space where he started talking about how he was quite frustrated, and he lost his wife recently due to cancer, and how that was affecting his work, and etc. And it by the end of those 90 minutes, it gave me a completely different dimension about that person's personality. I had no clue about what problems this person was facing, from the outside. This was a fantastic experience to actually get to know the kind of constraints and the kind of restraints under which a person is, engaging within that organization. And it changes the entire information set that I am carrying about that person, and that transforms the space between me and that person and how we engage within that professional space. It was just simply amazing. That transformation in that personal space was simply amazing. And the same with family members. I did this with my wife. I did this with my daughter. And I actually thought I always knew my relationship with my wife and my daughter extremely well, because I'm pretty, we bond very well. But what information came out in the empathy walk was things that I really didn't know. I thought I knew, but I didn't know. So this is, again, it transforms the space in the relationship that you have with these people. That is what happens in the empathy walk.
Thanks, Trevor. If there are any of you listening in, if you have any questions for the two of them, please post it out here. So would you like to share something more, Stephanie? And also, you talked about the prototyping. Dreven also talked about it. If you can briefly cover that, so it would provide a more holistic approach here.
Yeah, I can echo what Dreven just mentioned about the family members. I did the empathy walk with my husband on a business problem of his, which we have for a year now. And the first time I feel I really understood what's going on. So going deeper into the perspective of the other person. And it's a discipline to stop the self-talk and the self-downloading. So for me, it's basically also like a training, because with all my stakeholders and clients, I'm trying to engage professionally in really understanding their needs, not only because of my services and products, but really establish this open relationship. I have found these kinds of relationships are so rewarding. So I'm trying as myself as a person to work really with this on a day-to-day basis. And as you mentioned earlier, Ram, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So it's with the listening, it's the same. As long as you observe yourself, keeping yourself true to this open heart, open mind, open will, it is really helpful. In terms of prototyping, also interesting, because Otto Scharmer really wants you to get into the doing. So, sometimes it's nice and discussions and things. And in the prototyping, you really start with 3 little steps fast. And Otto Scharmer is also nice. I think it's 14 questions, journaling questions. What do you want to do? What is the next concrete step? So with working with this journaling questions, which is also a huge part of Otto Scharmer's work, constantly working with the journaling, you get into a plan pretty fast. And we moved into a prototype for schools where we want to establish a more learner-centric atmosphere on eye level. It's not downloading from teacher to kids. It's more like a community of learners. So that emerged from ours seeing different systems differently. Not, you know, the top down one way, but more creating an atmosphere where people can really achieve their potential.
Thanks a lot. There was your question here in the empathy walk. Does it start with a session agenda as in a coaching session, or is it just open-ended?
No, actually, it's really more, I think there's 3 or 4 questions as well, especially when you do it with the stakeholders. There are specific questions, but usually it's more your intention of really listening, not interrupting, not putting your filters on. It's more a self-centering thing. So what I did it in the forest, which is pretty much grounding me, so that I'm not jumping in my old patterns. So we did it walking. We really walked an hour in the forest in nothingness.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. So yeah, we are pretty much close to the time. Unfortunately, we don't have the time. But what I would really suggest is definitely, Dreven, thank you very, very much. What I would invite, if there is sufficient interest, please write to Magda. What we can do is, if you're willing, you could be the leaders, there could be other people. I think Kannan has seemed to have gone through this program. There could be some others. I know Ujjwal has gone through this program. We could get some such coaching circles started, and for you to sort of help other people to understand what it's all about and let them go into this. And so to whatever extent we can support the larger work that Otto Sharma is doing with the theory labs, and perhaps we could be of some value added in terms of as coaches coming together. We would certainly, as Coacharya, we would support that. So please, individually, if you could write to Magda as to what your interest would be. Even if you have like a coaching circle, typically would have how many? 10 people, right? It's limited to 10 people.
No, it's limited to maximum of 6.
6, okay. 6 people, okay. So let's say the 2 of you lead and maybe a couple of other people coming in. So we could form 6 into 3 or 4, whatever it might be. And then let's see what happens with that and where we can take that and learn and move forward. So once again, thank you very, very much.